Welcome to the RideShare Guy podcast, where you will learn about the rideshare and mobility industry straight from Harry Campbell, who's got over 5 years experience covering the industry and has talked to thousands of drivers. There's no better place to stay up to date, entertained, and educated. So let's dive in.
All right. So Rebecca Locke has a BA in communication from Wake Forest University and an MA in modern Chinese history from Columbia University. She studied Mandarin language at UCLA and in China. Did not know that about her. She's also built a 15-year career as a reality and documentary TV producer in Los Angeles, New York, and DC, running and producing shows for networks such as FX, NBC, Hulu, AE, and Discovery. She's also a mom of two and an animal advocate. She's a member of the organization Chief and loves brainstorming with and helping other female entrepreneurs. So knowing all that about Rebecca, she's now in the rideshare industry and has got a really cool new company, Kidcaboo, that we're going to learn all about. And you've got some really cool initiatives going. So Rebecca, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to talk with you.
Definitely. I'm excited to have you here. And, I guess it's always, we've chatted online quite a bit. This is actually our first time meeting, I guess, virtually, you would say. Yeah. And it's funny that, we've known each other for all this time, but there was a lot just from your bio alone that I did not know about you. So first of all, I've got to start on the Chinese studies part because I'm half Chinese. I don't know if you knew that, but how did you make your way from the world of, Mandarin studies to reality TV to now technology and running a rideshare company? We've got to know the story.
This was like just a serendipitous slide, if you will. I was very much into languages growing up. I spoke, French, Spanish, German. And when I went to college, I figuring I would go into international law. So I was thinking of Russian, Arabic. This is before 9/11, or Chinese Mandarin. And one was at 8 a.m., one was at 9 a.m., and one was at 10 a.m. And I'm a college freshman. So I choose Mandarin for taking this. I do very well in this. And I end up going on to get my master's in this. Cool. And I was at Columbia University, as you mentioned, in New York. And for my last year, I moved to UCLA because they have such an excellent Mandarin program. I wanted to do my third year of language there. Columbia would accept their credits. I moved out there and I don't watch TV. I fell into television production, which is so odd. So many people moved to LA to get into that. I never wanted to and fell into it and loved it.
Very cool.
Very much.
Very cool. Well, so that's a really interesting background. And I'm curious how much you're using the Mandarin and the television production these days with your company. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but let's dive right in. So tell us about Kidcaboo. How did it come about? And, maybe give us the quick pitch on what the company is, where you're operating. And, also I'd love to hear the story about how it came about.
Yeah, so Kidcaboo was founded in January of 2019. I had taken 3 years off to raise my children, who were then 3 and 6. Cool. And they were both now going to be in school for full time. And so I thought, awesome time to go back to work. I got an awesome opportunity to work on a Bravo Housewives show. And I was so excited about the opportunity. And
Wow, which one? My wife is a big fan of Housewives. Atlanta.
But I didn't do it because of this, but I couldn't find someone to drive my kids to school.
Oh,
and I loved that career so much. And I was so excited. It was like well-paying career. I mean, my family's financial, future was, considered and factored into all of this. And I had to ultimately turn the job down. I was willing to pay well, but could not get someone to drive my kids the 2 miles to school. Yes, it was stunning. Yeah. Because I didn't realize this was a problem.
Just to and from school every Monday through Friday.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. And so I look into this. I'm in the suburbs of Manhattan at the time. And, I realized so many people are having the same problem. And I just look into the problem. And I end up starting to talk to parents who are sharing this problem and end up doing about 800 rides myself over 10,000 miles.
So you gave 800 rides to kids.
I worked with families to make this happen. Wow. And there was no license for this in Jersey. There was nothing that we could, but we were trying to figure out what a solution would look like. And often my little children were in the car and I would just look back at them and be like, ride sharing works so well for adults, but we're ignoring like this proportion of the population, a third of the population. How could we make it work for these people as well? Kids. And, that really helped inform how this model was put together. And so
how did you find those first 800 ride? I don't know if it was 800 families, but I'm assuming at least dozens or 100 families. How did you find those folks? Were they just already in your network? Were you on Facebook groups talking to the other moms or dads, or how'd you find those people that were also in need?
Yeah, well, I mean, we were right outside of Manhattan. And so I think there were a lot of parents going into the city, we're right on the train line every day. And so they have these kids back at home, and it was sort of like nobody could get their kids around. And for some reason, there aren't buses. And, and there are people who want their kids to be able to do activities, and I think this was just something that was a huge need in the suburbs of Manhattan. And so just, really connected with these families as far as what are your pain points? What is this doing to your life? Wow, it literally just took my career that I loved away, my well-paying career that I'd put so much time into. What does it do for you? And I learned so much by talking to these people, and was very much goaded for it. There was a female entrepreneur contest that I won. A lot of assistance came from that, legal assistance, et cetera. And, I'd never considered building a business. I had to learn financial model, insurance. I mean, I was flat out told by, I think, somebody who wrote one of the first similar commercial auto policies that we have now. I'm a nice enough guy, I'm sure, but he was like, Rebecca, you seem to have a better chance than most, but you're not going to build this business. The reason in 2019 was that some of the liability was starting to come to fruition, I think, as far as insurance for ride shares. And he was just like, I'll send you the list of things you need. It was like apps, I mean, monumental things, and you could have been easily dissuaded. And I just sort of blindly walked forward, having no idea. And then one day, all of a sudden, a business was built,
before you knew it.
Yeah, I know. And then
it's very cool. I mean, definitely we've talked to a lot of execs and CEOs of rideshare companies, big and small, and I don't think any one of them have ever said that it's easy. So I definitely commend you for all the effort that you've put in. Talk a little bit about where the company started and where it's at now. Maybe you can give us a sense of where it's operating, how many drivers you have, or what type of rides, where and how you're operating these days.
Yeah, so we held several beta periods around the New York City area. And then, and the numbers proved everything that I knew at that point about the market and demand. And so when COVID started, our team, our core team, the guys who were helping get the apps done, and operations and our driving nanny recruitment, we just hunkered down and we built. People I know were like, oh, poor Rebecca, her company, all this, but that never crossed my mind. We just kept going, and we built and built. And then at some point,
I mean, obviously schools were not happening during the beginning of COVID. So there wasn't much business or rides, I guess, happening for you. But at the same time, it sounds like you
literally just stopped, and we were like, we're going into
working on the app, the product and everything.
Exactly. And then in April of 2021, we got our first investment. And then that allowed us to start building our team. That was to finish the 2 apps, and it was going to help us get licensed in 2 states, build a team, and get
so to finish both the driver and rider apps, get licensed in a couple states, get commercial insurance going, like you said, and everything.
So, and we stretched that a lot. And so, this gentleman invested more, and we did. So we were trying to get licensed in New Jersey, which was a journey and continues to be, but we were moving forward. We, I think, we're the first company to get Attorney General approval on our background check process in that state, and we were moving through the MVC, and of course that's where we were founded. So that's we were really hoping, but this was dragging on for over a year.
What's MDC?
The Motor Vehicle Commission in Jersey. Yeah. And so then we got our license in Texas, so officially launched in February of 2022. So just like a few months ago.
Recently, cool.
Ramp up, knowing we'd build teams and be ready for this fall.
Yeah.
So we launched in Texas, Arizona, North Carolina, and then we partnered with Tusk Holdings Pericles program. And this was a game changer. I do believe we would have gotten approval and our license in Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would have been the first children's rideshare approved in that state. We were close.
Mm-hmm.
They are very, very instrumental in pushing that through quickly, though. And then they're also helping us license. We're working in Maryland, Virginia right now, Chicago, Pennsylvania, Philly. We'll do Massachusetts eventually. Connecticut, if I mentioned that, and Nebraska, Illinois, a bunch of states. The way that we had practiced during those beta periods, scaling the B2C model allows us to move very fast across states. And so, we'll be able to do that. And we should be in most of those states before the school year starts.
Wow. So, I mean, I guess for a relatively new company, you've been licensed in quite a number of states. I mean, I feel like that's the interesting thing when people are starting new rideshare companies, or especially a specialized one like this that's transporting minors, right? Because that's sort of a separate category in a lot of states from, someone like Uber or Lyft that's transporting people. There might be more requirements, more insurance, like you mentioned, or maybe even, it's harder. And, that licensing and insurance, when people tell me about a new insurance or a new rideshare company, the first thing I always ask them, are you licensed? Are you insured? Right? Because those are sort of the two big hurdles. And it sounds like you've been able to, at least get approved to operate in a number of states. Was there any reason why you decided to focus on multiple states or, multiple outlets versus, getting one region going and, then kind of expanding to other places?
Yeah. I think it's funny because we just launched, but and in theory, we are. This is new, but we've been doing this and practicing this for like 3.5 years. And so to say that we know, we conducted fake driving nanny interviews with real people, mind you, but like thousands of them over and thousands of it. So it doesn't feel to me like that. So we knew this procedure, just down pat. Many people are in television because they're creative. I was a really good producer because I was organized and type A as hell, if I could say, but I am swear. Very detail oriented, and we had this thing down pat, and we knew when we launched we could move fast because we had done it over and over again.
Very cool. And how do the other thing too that I think comes up, and you kind of hit on, is the fact that it is expensive, right? Develop apps and to hire a team and all of that. How'd you find your first investor, who sounds like has been a great partner from the start, and maybe even kicked in a little bit more money when it turned out that it was more expensive than people realized? So how did you find them, and what were those early investment conversations like? Why was this investor so on board with this mission?
So I'll say this: we did before he invested, and I had known him for a while. He was a parent that we worked with. We did a ton. The few people that were involved from the beginning that believed in me, probably when everybody else would have just been like, good luck, girl. But we had done a lot. So we had apps we had a whole app team.
How did you fund those initial apps and things like that? What did cost money?
So there was our current CIO, Rick Gilman. He was introduced very early on, like 3 months into this idea. Before I didn't know Hop, Skip, Drive existed, Zoom at this point. And we were introduced through a friend. I think, Rick had a great marketing career, was starting to work with app development as part of that. His son was, I think he'd saved a lot of money. His son ends up being this star in a Wes Anderson, Moonrise Kingdom at the age of 10. He was now at NYU. And I think Rick had all, some money that he had saved for him. Jared didn't really need the money at this time. And so Rick was looking for this passion project. His wife was totally fine with this. She's now very close with me. And he was like, let's build these apps. let's do this together.
Got
And
it.
so like he had the resources that he had. He started pulling people together, and we were working for years. We would meet daily.
Yeah.
I didn't have a dime to pay him at this time, and he knew that, or anyone else that he was bringing in.
Yeah.
Yet we were all working on this together. They knew I intended to pay them back, but so
well, it sounds like the key was sort of really finding that passionate partner, right? Sort of the chicken and the egg, right? Like obviously you go to an investor, they want to see some traction, they might want to see an app, they might want to see some progress, but at the same time, right? So it's sort of like finding that balance. Like obviously, especially early on, everyone kind of needs to work for free. So finding people that can provide value on the tech side and on the ride side, like you said yourself, you gave 800 rides, which I'm sure if you come to an investor and say, hey, like I've already given 800 rides, that's pretty impressive right there. I've already got an app, right? It sort of gives them a bit more confidence. And, we get a lot of people who approach us and say, I've got this great idea. I'm going to revolutionize the rideshare industry. All I have is a PowerPoint. It's not, it's a lot of work to get to that point, but it's probably, 1% of the journey. So I definitely commend you on that. And it sounds like you guys have got some great partners, some great investors. And I think it's also an interesting time. I saw here that, you've got the WeFunder campaign going on. You guys are actively raising money right now. It looks like you're already over $300,000, which when I pulled that up, I was quite impressed. I mean, I don't know what number I was expecting, but I feel like a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, I think the stats all say most of them never get much in funding, beyond a few thousand or tens of thousands. But you guys have obviously struck a nerve or struck a chord with the right people. So I'd love for you to talk about the current state of the company and the investment and everything that you're doing on WeFunder right now, because I think it's definitely a cool opportunity for people to get involved in the company.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, that there was, we did have about $1 million invested in seed funding.
Got it.
To
get to this point
off the ground. And we could have continued to raise conventionally. I realized at some point within the last few months where the trajectory of this company at that point was likely to go. I am not an overly optimistic or an unrealistic human being. There were tons of times this company could have and should have failed. We were finally on fairly stable ground, and I recognized where we would likely be soon. And I wanted to open this up to family and friends before that happened.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that, except at some point, people who had worked hard to help make this company happen early on also wanted to invest.
Yeah.
And they were being told no because they weren't accredited investors. And I was like, that does not feel right to me.
Yeah.
And so what can we do about this? And we're not raising much. We're raising like $2.5 million right now. And so I was like, let's find a way to make this happen. And so my lawyers worked with me, and we went to WeFunder. And those guys are really the ones who worked very hard to change this law. They, so I respected the platform anyway and their work. So we went that route, and it's been really exciting and very new. I don't know that we'll raise like this again. It has been an amazing opportunity, though, an amazing experience. And
for sure,
I mean, the investors that we found that don't know me personally have been so passionate. You have a story here about this.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, I guess we just realized right before we came on air that it sounds like one of your investors actually reached out to me about interviewing you on the podcast or sharing the WeFunder, and I actually thought he was, part of the company. I thought he worked for you or worked with you. And so big shout out to Karthik. Thank you for connecting Rebecca
so
and
much.
I. But I guess it kind of shows you, I'm on the WeFunder right now, and there's a tab of, what people say. And it's sort of interesting to see, like, I think the idea really resonates with a lot of people. I see a lot of actually profile photos with people with kids in their photo. It's like brilliant idea, much needed for kids. So I think this is a really cool concept for, folks that are, that have like experiences. Like I'm a parent of 2 boys and they're only 2 and 4. So I'm like the one, I'm the one shuttling them around. I'm their Uber driver. better right now.
Right.
But, it is challenging, right? To sort of
Yeah,
like,
when
you
they
really
get
have
school,
to, I've got a
especially.
dentist appointment for them tomorrow morning.
Mhm.
It's like, it really does kind of disrupt a lot of things. So I think having that as an option definitely resounds with a lot of people. So it's cool to see you guys
Yeah.
are, at a few 100,000 right now on WeFunder, and it looks like you have $1 million goal, $12 million valuation cap. So it sounds like the WeFunder experience is going pretty good so far.
Yeah, it's going well. And I mean, we're concurrently raising another safe, or as part of the same, same terms as the second million. And, we're open to moving it over to the WeFunder thing's just going so much better than I expected. I don't know what I expected, Harry. Like I'd never done this.
Yeah.
And, but I'm glad I did. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
So,
And so I guess on the investment note, you mentioned the Tusk Holdings Pericles program,
I
which
did.
actually, funny enough, I just looked it up. So on episode 81 of the RideShare Guy podcast, we had Bradley Tusk on. So that's October 2018. And for those who don't know, he was very involved in the early days of Uber and, figuring out the regulation. I think their fund is pretty well known for dealing with these types of companies that are in toughly regulated issues. So talk a little bit more about the Pericles program that you have a partnership with, and sort of how that's going to help you guys scale.
Yeah. So I just in talking to like VCs that I was being introduced to, talking to through friends, I kept hearing, you have to reach out to this Tusk Pericles program. Like I can't, people who didn't know they weren't connected. They would all just say this as if somebody knew the secret that I didn't know. And I was like, okay, why? Like, what is this? And I think at some point, someone tried to make an introduction, then went to London or something, went away. And I remember looking it up and I was like, oh, I see. I see why everybody is okay. And I think we would have been fine doing this on our own at that point. We're pretty far along in Jersey, which was victory enough. There were like politicians getting involved. It was that like important to them. And so, but I reached out to the head of the business development, like on LinkedIn, like, you have like 300 characters and like, I was like, 1 million people have now made introductions. He's not going to respond this way. And like 30 seconds later, I had a ping and we got on the phone and like, he was like, we've been approached, but there are other companies that approach them like this. We were just perfectly poised because of the way we're operating our model, our scales, the relationships that we had, the partnerships we had, and our positioning at the time to work with them. And it has been the most remarkable program. At first, our lawyers were like skeptical. They're now like best partnership ever. Very hands-on. We're working with them for 6 to 9 months actively, and then they are partners, but they've helped, media,
very cool.
And really we're licensing quickly again, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Virginia, DC, Illinois, just a ton of states that they're taking off my plate, quite frankly, because I could have done that, but then I can't focus on funding and growth and
Very cool. Well, no, I think it sounds like you've definitely, I guess a recurring theme is you've signed up some great partners to sort of join you on this journey. And I mean, you mentioned a couple of times too, that this is B2C. I mean, I guess, so the actual product itself, this is for, individuals who want a ride for their kids. Let's talk a little bit about the product itself, and maybe we can get into, I know safety is a big component of what you're offering here, for parents. So talk a little bit about what's the actual product look like for, parents and I guess the kids too.
So I mean, like, at the end of the day, I mean, we're a tech company, we're a marketplace. I mean, we match what we call driving nannies with families who need rides for their children, basic level. A lot of the specialization of that and the way that we scaled certain channels to be able to operate in a what I call B2C, I mean, P2P sometimes. I mean, I don't know, whatever it is, we deal with families directly and like children directly. Gotcha. And it's because of certain channels that we selected to scale. And the 800 drives informed that. My own kids, informed that. Had I not done that, I don't know that I could have figured out that this component that was so important to what our identity is and why what differentiates us, I think. And yeah, it's worked extremely well. So we work with families, our driving nannies, and we connect them, and we're able to do that quickly.
Yeah.
We don't
and
have any partnerships with schools, though.
For sure. No, it makes sense. And I mean, I think that, like, looking at the features that you offer, you've got things like real-time dash cams, driver monitoring. It's sort of all the things that parents, that additional protection that people might need. And I also like to, in the nanny vetting process, I was reading on the site that, it sounds like you have to be 21 plus, 3 years of childcare experience, right? Because I mean, let's be honest, I've got 2 kids. Dealing with kids isn't always easy, right? So having some experience there is helpful as a driver. And then it also said something about an interview. Do you interview people in person or over Zoom? Because I think that's one thing that is unique. I mean, and I'd love to talk about, the fact, sort of what you've seen, how you think about Uber in this space, because, a lot of rides happen on Uber for minors, even though technically it's against the terms of service. And I don't know that a lot of parents realize, like, most or every Uber driver does not do an interview. They, it's like you can literally sign up from your couch, which is great if you're a driver. But, I feel like I would not be putting my kid in an Uber. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I mentioned Rick, who came along and helped with the app. Kind of like on day one, there was this grad student, and she's a psychology grad student, which actually ended up making a difference, that I contacted. And together we developed this driving nanny sort of interview and vetting process, practice over and over and over again, so we could scale it quickly, but be thorough. Yeah. And we've stuck by that. Now, did it go to Zoom when COVID happened? Yes, it did. Do we still meet the driving nannies? Does someone still meet the driving nannies in person on the ground? Yes, they do. But a lot of what we do now still happens, and as thorough as our background check process is, we work with RideShare Mechanic. You're familiar with them.
Yep. Hamed has been on the podcast before. Yeah, they're great partners.
And we pay for that inspection. What we learn the most, though, is through those in-person interviews. Any resume can say anything you want, but we will know if you were a Kidcaboo driver through that interview.
For sure. Yeah, it is. And I think the interview is actually like an important part, right? Like, I actually really like the fact that, Lyft back in the day, for example, they used to do a mentor ride where to become a Lyft driver, you had to take a ride with a more experienced driver. And I was a Lyft mentor for a while. And it was like, most people you actually pass, but it was just like a good, quick sanity check, right? And it's like, hey, is this person a weirdo or not? Or, do they have like the basic skills? Like, if they get in and it's like, they're dressed terrible and it's like slovenly and that's how they're showing up to a job interview. It's like, okay, quick fail. Like not that hard when you're in the customer service business. And it's just funny because like a lot of times, people are, like just like that little barrier, I think you can really learn a lot, right? Like obviously maybe a 10 interview process to become one driver might be too extreme, but I do feel like that just that one sort of in-person or, face-to-face, even if it's over Zoom type of encounter can really, I think just like step up the quality. And in something like this, where you're having drivers actually transport kids, I think it's super important. So I imagine that this is like a good selling point for you, compared to, I mean, I guess, how do you think about Uber in this space? Do you feel them as a competitor, or do you think it's sort of like good in general? What do you think about them?
No, I mean, I think I get asked about that a lot. No, and they are doing their thing, and they are doing their thing well. And I mean, they are really scaling mobility for people quickly across the globe in a way that I think is absolutely amazing. It's very different than what we do. I very much respect what they've done. I think every company has stumblings along the way. You learn, you grow, hopefully, and I think that's amazing. But I do think for kids, like even Hamed, you mentioned, and like we have camera installers. Hamed and I were talking, and those guys are always willing to like, look, we're all building these businesses together. We all like help one another out, like with suggestions or ideas or whatever. And he was like, hey, do you want us to just like do a sanity check too on top of what you're already doing for these people? And we'll call you if we think anyone's like rude or weird. yeah, absolutely, let's do this. And then we'll have camera installers who will sometimes like, even they'll make it through all the way through these, like our processes. And camera installer will go, they'll be rude, late or something. And I'll get a call and it'll be like, we're not onboarding this driving nanny because this. And I'll be like, yeah, we're catching at all of these different levels.
Well, and that was sort of like one of the things, the Lyft mentor rides, you actually did a vehicle inspection. So as a mentor, you would actually do a vehicle inspection with them and then you would take them on a ride. And so it's sort of like dual purpose, like do the inspection, but then also see if they'd be a good fit. And, I think that, unfortunately, I think that was one thing that the company moved away from, but because they are that mass market, mass market product. So you mentioned driving nannies a bit. Let's talk a little bit. So what's it like to be a driver? And, I guess maybe we can start or end with the all important question. Of course, drivers in our audience probably want to know how much they can make as a driving nanny for Kidcaboo, but also what's the experience like and what should they expect? When's it busy? I'm guessing that you provide your own car and then sign up very similar to Uber.
You do. And so our minimum is $15 per ride, which is anything under like $15 to $20 or 15 to 20 minutes or around 4 to 5 miles. So anything under that.
So you've got a nice high minimum fare. So right off the bat, drivers probably love that because
I think, no, it's super important. And it also, I mean, like in the long run, it like saves, the incentives. I mean, we offer like generous bonuses, but I mean, we pay well to begin with. And I think that's super important. So, but then like, we also like hands-on work with drivers to like get rides sort of connected a little bit. And so we have a lot of drivers who make like $60, $70 an hour doing a few rides, like in between like classes or like, whenever local moms, may have some time or whatever. And I think, so that is really our as far as pay goes. We do bonuses based on performance, timeliness, surprise bonuses, but then also like we have Zen Drive, which that's built in. I mean, we have drivers that do very well, they're incentivized to continue to do well, so paid for that. We're I'm considering the bonus thing. We could talk about the gig employee versus contractor thing later.
Also, drivers are independent contractors for Kidcaboo. They provide their own car. So it's similar to Uber in that respect. I guess the one big difference to me is that there is more of a formal vetting process, which I think is, to be honest, I think that's definitely a good thing for the company. But I feel like one thing that's missing in the gig economy, if you're driving for Uber and Lyft, it's hard to be rewarded. If you're a loyal driver, if you've got 25,000 trips for Uber and a 5-star rating, you don't get anything bigger, better. You don't call into customer support and go to the front of the line. Nothing.
So
really,
that's crazy to me.
And so
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like interesting to kind of like highlight these opportunities for folks that are looking to like upskill. Like, hey, if I'm in one of the neighborhood, one of the areas that Kidcaboo is operating, it's like, hey, they do a more thorough process. But within an interview, right? I imagine if you're looking at 2 candidates, one is a brand new driver and one has 25,000 trips, it's like, wow, we really can take good care of this driver. We really will value them. So I think it's important. It's like there's definitely higher earnings potential and also setting the right expectations. I mean, I imagine that during the day, is it not busy because kids are in school? Is it before school and after school? What are the hours where it's busiest for drivers?
Right. So I mean, like we don't just meet school needs. I mean, and I think somebody at Tusk said this once, and I thought it was totally valid. Basically, like you're doing something that hasn't been done since the school bus was invented, which at the time the school bus worked for like 90% of kids. Awesome, great. And that declined for multiple like reasons in American culture over time. We're reinventing children's transportation for modern American family life. And that does not just involve school. So, I mean, we do operate in the morning, and then I would say there are a few things in the afternoon, yes, but mostly like before school, after school, and then into the evening activities, summer camp, et cetera. So our drivers work then, and then a lot of them, like we don't purport to be a company that can offer full-time salary. maybe we meet that for some people, but I think like, I tell people straight up, I mean, I don't think this is a job you should take if you're looking for something full-time. Like, however, I will say this, probably the best thing that we offer, and we've consistently done this, our COO was a former driving nanny, et cetera. I am a huge proponent of offering growth opportunities within the company.
Yeah.
If somebody proves themselves to me, I'm extremely loyal, and we will remember you and seek you out. And we'll be like, hey, what do you like? Social media? Do you like HR? Like, do you like legal? Like, what is your interest? And we'll move you up. Yeah. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think I've seen that with a lot of the smaller to medium, especially in the specialized rideshare companies. It's like you want people who can, empathize with what it's like to be a driver. And frankly, I think when they move up in the company into those roles, they're going to be much better served because of it. I guess one other bonus that I would say of, I've actually never done, sort of like I've done a lot of different jobs in the gig economy, but now that I think about it, I've never done like rideshare for kids. So when you expand to California, we might have to chat.
Welcome.
And maybe we'll see if I can pass the interview process, to be honest. But
California's like last on my list for some reason, but
We'll talk. We'll see how many California drivers want to sign up after this podcast. But, one other thing too, that like working with kids is kind of fun. I joked earlier, right, that it's a lot of work, but I feel like actually when you have other kids, like your own kids are a lot of work, but when you're watching other kids, like they're always on their best behavior, they're like, my kids are like amazing, angels at daycare. And when they're with the grandparents, and with me, they're a little crazy, but like when they're with other people, they're like super fun and really fun to hang out with. So I guess that's the other thing. Like we hear a lot of, on traditional rideshare right now, there's issues around safety. And, frankly, like a lot of people have switched over to delivery because they may not like or enjoy, transporting like drunk passengers on Friday, Saturday night. So I feel like that's another kind of cool little bonus of transporting, minors. It's like they're fun to be around, and they're definitely not going to be trying to bring alcohol in your car. I can guarantee that.
And I think one VP of ours, there was an issue with a driver one day, an emergency happened. And so this VP was like, I'm going to do this drive myself. She's a mom. And afterwards she called and she was almost in tears. And she was like, every day I drive my kids to school and I do the same. And because Kidcaboo is not yet in Pennsylvania, it will be soon, but I'm doing this where I am right now. And so I, you are stressed out, you're rushing, you're whatever, it's not a whatever. And she was like, but with this little girl, she was like, we were laughing and it was fun and it was light. And that is what it should be like for these kids. It was less stressful for the kids to start their morning as well, because the moms aren't rushed. Not to just say moms, parents, aren't rushed, and stress is less.
Very cool. Well, I think that's a great note to end on, and very exciting. I think, for those who have been, actually sounds like you've got quite a few investors on the WeFunder campaign. I'm sure there'll be some people listening and watching to this that might be considering an investment. And then also from the driver's side, I think there's going to be some cool opportunities on the driving side. So we'll definitely link to the WeFunder campaign and the Kidcaboo website. Is there anything else people should know, or what we should sort of expect in terms of what's next for Kidcaboo? Where do you want to leave our viewers and listeners, with?
Yeah, I mean, we'll be expanding to all 50 states. We are open to, where we'll be in 5 years. But I mean, I think, we have some very concrete paths to what I hope will be a solution that will change the lives of especially working moms, and really facilitate daily lives of families in America, across America.
Very cool. Well,
I get to ask you a question though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're lucky that you reminded me, because I was about to end the podcast, but this is perfect timing. Yeah, because we've got the very popular segment where you get to ask me a question. So what do you got for me, Rebecca? And we'll end it there.
Craziest founder starting story that you've ever heard,
as far as like people that I've talked to?
The craziest experience that a founder has ever told you that they've gone through when starting a startup, or like.
Gotcha. The first thing that comes to mind, and maybe it's because he texted me recently, is my friend. His name is Herb Coakley. I'll give him a little shout out right now. He was actually the founder of a company called Maestro that allowed drivers to dual app, so to drive for both Uber and Lyft. And it was super popular with drivers. I think they, kind of like instantly resonated with the fact like, hey, I drive for both Uber and Lyft. This is super handy and helpful, but also from a safety perspective, it was really valuable because, if you're dual apping and you're driving down the middle of the road, you get an Uber request, you accept it real quick, and then you got to switch over to Lyft and log off before you get a Lyft request. And it's like you're doing this all while you're driving. And so it's really popular with drivers. I think they had thousands of paying members at one point. But what I really liked, and I think I interviewed him on the podcast about this, he told me that he actually used to be an Uber driver, and he found one of his first investors from the back of an Uber. So he was driving for Uber in San Francisco, and he had this idea and he'd been chatting with people, but he was just literally just a normal Uber driver. And you might appreciate this because he used to be in film industry. He used to be in the film industry, so he might be a good person. I think at one point, of course, he lived in LA, and then he was in SF driving for Uber, and he had this idea. He had been trying to get people to build it for him, and one of the passengers that he picked up, he got to chatting and told him about his idea, and I believe this passenger actually ended up writing one of the first checks into this company. They ended up getting into Y Combinator. I came on as an advisor, and the company is still around. He's not involved with the company anymore. They're still around today, but it was just kind of a cool founder story.
That is unbelievable and
yeah,
really good. And I can't believe I came up with a question to ask you. So
I know it was a pretty good question, and I'm looking. I interviewed Herb. Episode 57, June 2017. So good stuff. And he's got a new company called Courier that's doing actually like B2B deliveries. So he's awesome. He's a smart guy. I think he's been texting me to schedule a call with him. So Herb, if you're listening, I'm gonna schedule that call soon.
Congrats, an awesome story.
All right. Well, Rebecca, this was really fun, really exciting. We'll share the links to the WeFunder to your website. I think you may have just gained one additional investor in myself too from this episode. So really a big supporter and a big fan of all the work you're doing. I think it's great on the customer side and kids side and on the driver side too. So wish you guys all the best of luck, and I'll be excited to have you on again in the future when you're in all 50 states.
Yeah, and I can't wait to read the book.
All right, cool. Take care.
Yeah.